Hello and happy Friday, friends. Welcome to the Mylio Photos Coffee Break. My name is Angela, and today we're going to be talking about some hidden tools inside the import dialog that you might have missed that will help improve your photo organization. Before we dive into today's topic, I do want to let you know that we have every Tuesday and Thursday live Q&A sessions. These are opportunities for you to drop in, ask questions in real time, and these are at 11:30 a.m. Pacific, 2:30 p.m. Eastern. And everybody is welcome, whether you're brand new or you've been with us for a very long time. Come by, ask questions, learn from other users, and it's a lot of fun. On Fridays, we have these sessions, which we call coffee breaks, which are short tutorials followed up by more time for questions. Next week, we're going to be talking about copyright basics. Now, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not going to teach you about registering with the Copyright Office, but I am going to show you how you can add your copyright information to the files that you bring into Mylio Photos. You'll learn how to set up an IPTC card, how to automatically add that on import. We'll touch a little bit on that today as well, and what that does for you. So that'll be next Friday. So hopefully you guys can join me for that. Let's go ahead and dive into today's topic, which is level up your imports, hidden tools for better organization. So as you bring media into Mylio Photos, there are some tools that you can use inside the app that will help make things easier for you later on. This is extra metadata and file renaming and folder organization that you can apply as your pictures are coming in to Mylio Photos. What that means for you is things are easier to find later, it takes some of the organization burden off of you later, and just makes things simpler overall. So what we're going to do today is cover the difference between adding media and adding a device. So a few kind of housekeeping things that are foundational to understand with Mylio Photos for importing. We'll talk about the difference between linking, copying, and moving a folder. And then we'll dive into those import options. And these are specifically for when you're copying a folder or moving a folder, and some of those advanced settings that you can use to make things easier for yourself later on. All right, so first up, the difference between adding media and adding a device. Now, our media sits on the devices that we have. It's probably on your phones. Maybe they're in folders on an external drive. So it's really easy to conflate the difference between adding media and adding a device. So let's go ahead and talk about why it's different. When you're adding media to Mylio Photos, you're telling Mylio, here's where my stuff currently is. And there's different ways you can add it. We'll go over those options later. So that's going to be your folders, your drives, or cloud sources. And when you add media to Mylio Photos, that's bringing it in to the Mylio Photos library, and Mylio can then index it and make it searchable later. Conversely, when you're adding a device, this is telling Mylio where to store your media. So this is not necessarily going to be where it's bringing stuff in. It's going to be telling Mylio where to put stuff. So once you've brought media in, where do you want Mylio to put it? And this is when you add an external drive, if you add another computer, different places that Mylio can store information. And all of your different devices that you add, be it a viewing device like a phone or a tablet, or an external drive, a NAS, and so forth, these are places where Mylio can put media. So that's the difference. When you add a device, you're telling Mylio where to store it. When you're adding media, you're telling it what to store. So hopefully that difference makes sense. So when you go into like the Mylio Photos manual and you're looking at the difference between adding media versus adding a device, hopefully you now understand why those two things are different. So another thing to understand is that folders, when you add a folder to Mylio Photos, those are a direct link to your file system. Mylio Photos doesn't physically hold your stuff. It points to where it lives on your various devices. Photos are stored in folders. We're going to talk more about adding folders in a little bit. And they're not stored inside the Mylio app. So that's one thing that a lot of people are going to get confused on, especially in days of like Apple Photos, where you import things into Apple Photos and Apple Photos holds your stuff. It's a closed package. You're not navigating the file system. Mylio is kind of the direct opposite of that, and we keep that wide open. You have access to all of that stuff in your file system, and Mylio just helps you manage it. So Mylio is continuously monitoring each of those folders. So when you're in the folders view, these are actual folders that live on your various devices. All right, so let's talk about, in general, the three different ways that you can add media to Mylio Photos. If you've gone into that Add Media button in Mylio, you're going to get the option to copy, move, or link a folder. So let's go through some of the pros and cons of each one of these and when you might want to use them. So first off, and the most common, is copying a folder. That's taking a set of media, making a copy of it, and putting it into a folder that Mylio is already watching. So it takes those contents and it duplicates them into that Mylio Pictures folder or wherever you tell it. And this is best for consolidating media. So if you have stuff scattered in a lot of different places and you want Mylio to bring it all together and then get it organized, say on a vault, that's what this is best for. And it's very flexible. This is going to give you the most options when you import. You can exclude duplicates, you can rename files, reorganize folders, and add keywords. Plus, if you're just getting started, this actually creates an additional copy of your media because you have where it originally was living. Now you have it in a folder that Mylio is watching. So it's automatically creating another copy for you, which is a backup. So that's something to keep in mind. Moving a folder is very, very similar, except that when all that stuff gets put into that folder that Mylio is watching, the original copy is deleted. So if you're wanting to pick it up and take it and drop it into another location, moving is what you're doing. It takes the folder and its contents and relocates them to that folder that Mylio is already watching. And that means that no duplicate remains. That can be beneficial if you're really trying to tidy things up. But if you don't have another copy of your stuff, it does eliminate that possibility of that immediate backup happening. So it really just depends on your needs. And this again helps you consolidate media and has those flexible import options for excluding duplicates, renaming files, reorganizing folders, and adding keywords. Some of the things to consider here is that the original files are permanently deleted after you move them. So once that move is complete, where they were originally stored, they are deleted. And it means that you don't have a backup. So if you're just getting started and one of your goals is to have replication, using the move option, unless you're moving it into, you move it into a folder and you already have, say, 2 vaults or 3 vaults set up, that will automatically replicate that for you across those devices. But if you only have those 2 locations and you're deleting one of them, you're still in a really tenuous situation because you only have 1 copy of your stuff. So keep that in mind as you choose between copy and move. Now, another option you have with Mylio Photos is to link a folder. This tells Mylio, here's a new folder that I want you to watch. And it leaves that folder where it's located, and Mylio now watches that new location. And this is really great for people who already have a semi-organized system. Maybe they're sharing that same set of folders with another program like Lightroom or another editing app that also monitors those folders, and they don't want to move things around because if Mylio's watching it and this other program's watching it, if you start moving stuff, one of those programs is going to get unhappy. So this is where linking a folder comes in. And it's best for people who are using these sets of folders with multiple applications and your stuff is already organized exactly the way you want it. Now, we can also bring in the exact organization you want with a copy or a move, but that's going to be talked about a little bit later on. Hopefully that all makes sense. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your basic import options. When you bring media in to Mylio Photos, you're going to go up to that upper right corner, you're going to click the Add Media button, and you're going to get a few options. And you're going to have the option, like I said, to link, copy, or move. So when you choose to link a folder, again, that is telling Mylio, watch this new location. You're only going to have the option to choose the source, which is the folder that Mylio is going to watch, and add categories. Those are the only 2 things that you can customize in that link. What we're going to go into today is going to be for the copy and move. And this is where you can choose source, destination, you can add categories, you can exclude suspected duplicates, and there's additional advanced settings that you can use when you do this. So I'm going to talk more about copying and moving because that's where things really get interesting and you can really help your future self by eliminating duplicates, renaming files, and making sure your organization is exactly how you want it to be, eliminating double work later on. So some of the advanced import settings that you're going to come across here, and again, these are with the copying and moving options only, is if you have enabled the IPTC. If you've gone into settings and set up an IPTC card, which we're going to talk about more in depth next week, is your copyright and contact information. So if you want to embed that information into your pictures, you can have that embedded right on import. So set that up, toggle that on, and that information automatically gets added to the metadata. Coming in the next release of Mylio, you'll get to see this today. You have this display in-app option. This is for people who shoot RAW plus JPEG pairs or RAW plus HEIC. You'll now have the option on import to choose, do you want to see the RAW pictures or do you want to see the JPEGs? What do you want Mylio to display and prioritize in that stack? That's, I think, going to be really helpful and just an additional way to work with this. Mylio already stacks your RAW plus JPEGs. RAW plus HEIC is going to be new. And having this option to choose on import which one you're looking at also is new. You also have the option to rename your files. So if you don't like the way that your camera is naming files, you can go ahead and create custom names or create some custom name format and have everything that you're bringing in be renamed. You can also organize folders. So depending on what type of media you're bringing in, if you're bringing in a folder off of a hard drive that's already organized, you have the option to keep that formatting and that organization intact. If you're bringing in pictures off of a camera memory card, maybe they span 2 weeks of a vacation or maybe even over a couple of months, and you want Mylio to automatically group those into the right folders, you can have it do that as well. Finally, you can have it add keywords, which I think is really helpful. This is where I add high-level keywords, things that describe everything. So if I was on vacation, I would add where I was vacationing, possibly if I was with family or if it was a work trip or different things, just some high-level things to describe that, and that automatically adds those keywords to everything that I import. All right, so I see the one here from Mike. Regarding moving folders that are linked, if I have a folder that is being watched by both Mylio and Lightroom, for instance, what is the best practice to either rename or move the folder? Both applications, Mylio and Lightroom, recommend to execute this action from in the app and not File Manager. So this is where it gets really tricky when you're using two separate file management applications. You have to pick one, and you would do it inside the app in one or the other, and then tell the other one where that folder went. And I think the easiest way to do this in my experience is going to be to move that folder within Mylio. Then you're going to go into Lightroom. It's going to have that little question mark or exclamation mark saying, hey, I don't know where this folder went. I think Lightroom makes it a little bit easier to reconnect those things. You would just click on that icon and then navigate to that new location where you moved it with Mylio. I think that's the easiest way. You could do it the opposite. And again, you're going to have Mylio be a little bit upset for a minute, and then you tell Mylio where that folder went. But I think doing it the other way around, make the move in Mylio, then update the location in Lightroom is the simplest. All right. And then Byrne says, this window copy files comes in the new version. Right. Yes, exactly. So it's a little bit different. You notice here there's the display in app. I am using the new version, so that's what I grabbed for my screenshot. So what you're seeing here is going to be in the new release, which I hope to have in your hands within the next couple of weeks. All right. So moving on from the questions there, let's go ahead and talk a bit about some of these advanced settings. So the first one I want to talk about is file naming. So there's several different ways or reasons that you might want to change the name of the files as you're bringing them into Mylio Photos. Scenario number one is going to be you have a bunch of images from a bunch of different sources. They're completely jumbled, and you know that everything in this folder was maybe from, brought in from your mom gave it to you. These are files from your mom. She scanned them. They're completely nonsensical, and you want to give them some rhyme or reason. So you can rename them something like, here's the date. So you can put in the date and a sequence. You can even put in custom text. Now this is a little bit trickier because you do have to go into custom and rename this for every single import, but you can go ahead and put in custom text where you want to in this. So when you go into file naming, and again, this is clicking on file naming here, and you're going to be able to choose to keep the existing file name. That's easy, understandable. Or you can choose a different format or a custom format. And under custom, there are a lot of options. This chart you see over here on the right, I'm sure it's probably not going to translate to be very easily read over Zoom. It is in the manual. You can go look for that. And that is going to give you all of these different things. Also, it's in this window, and you can just scroll down here in this window and see each one of these different things to code exactly the format you want for your file names. Some common ones I use are the date and a sequence. So in this case, that would be 25/12/12 for today, and a 4-digit number. So that would be a 4-digit sequence, and it would be 0001, 0002, and so forth. This one here is year, month, date with the same sequence. So 2025-12-12, and there's a sequence. Now you'll notice here, as I put this in here, I'm also adding the punctuation, and you want to add that when you configure your custom format here. So if you want punctuation between certain things, you'll need to add that in. So again, they'll use the curly brackets with the Y, and then a dash, hyphen, little m in the curly brackets, dash, and D, and so forth. So you have control over how that's formatted, but you have to be kind of specific in how exactly you want that to turn out. And then this would be the example result. Another option here is, again, year, month, day. I put in an underscore, and then I added custom text. When you're doing a file name, I do like to add a dash between each word. So if it's a multi-word name, you would do custom dash text, and then I do an underscore, and then there's my sequence again. And this is how that would come out. So for example, you have 25/12/12, beach dash San dash Diego, underscore, and again, I'm typing in the underscore here, and 0001, and then the CR3 will be the file type off my Canon camera. So that's how you configure custom file names. If you just want to use one of the pre-built-in ones here, you can just click prefix and sequence, year, month, day, sequence, and so forth. Those are perfectly acceptable to use as well. Now moving on to folder organization. And again, this is clicking this folder organization option here. You have the option to select how those folders are formatted. So there's 2 different ways that you can go about this. The first 2 options, these preserve your existing folder structure. So if you're bringing in a semi-organized set of images, you already have some subfolders in there that you want to preserve and keep. You want the pictures that are in those subfolders to stay where they're at. You're going to use one of these top 2 items. And so add contents of selected folder adds everything that's in the folder you select. It's not going to add the top level folder, but everything that's inside of it, all the files, all of the subfolders, everything that's in your subfolders, all of that is preserved and will be copied or moved to whatever location in Mylio Photos you choose. The second item here is add selected folder as a new item. And that actually takes that top level folder with everything that's inside of it and plops it down in whatever location you choose in Mylio. So those first 2 options are the ones you're going to want to pick if you already have something that's semi-organized and you want to preserve that organization. On the other hand, if you're coming from a jumbled mess of files or a camera memory card or something like that, you'll want to use one of these other options for folder organization. And this creates a new folder structure for you. So some of the common custom folder formats here, I like to just use a simple year, month, day. So there's the year, the month, the day. You're taking the codes that are listed in that these custom options here. You're adding in the dash in between each one, and there's your your folder format. Again, you can do just year and month. You can do year and month with the month spelled out. These are different codes. So little m is 12, or the number of the month. Big B, uppercase B, is the month spelled out. So you have options in how these are formatted. And again, all of these different parameters are listed in the manual. So you can format this to be whatever you like. And one other cool thing to mention is once you do this, those options will be there next time you go in. You don't have to type this in and figure this out every time. It stays and is preserved for your future imports. Now you can always go in and change it, and then whatever changes you make, those will be, again, there for your future imports. Now, finally, one thing that I want to point out here is you can create nested folders with this. So let's say you have, you went on a vacation, you're gone maybe 2 or 3 weeks, very lucky, and you have pictures on a memory card that span over a couple of months. And you want Mylio to not only put those into different maybe days, but you maybe want to put them into different months. Or maybe it was over the Christmas and New Year's holiday and you went from 25 to 26 and you want to have those things broken down. You can tell Mylio to create nested folders. So this is kind of a pro tip, a little bit of an advanced thing that you can do in import is if you put a slash in here, putting that /, that is basically creating a folder path. So I can say create a top level folder with the year, the 2025, and then inside of that, we're going to put the date. So 2025, 12/12. I could also get a little bit more fancy. I can do year/B, which is going to be my month December, and then my year, month, date. So again, this is creating a folder structure within that destination where you're putting things. And then Mylio is going to use the metadata that's inside your pictures to figure out what goes into what folder. And based on those dates, that's where those things are going to go. And again, here's another one, year/month. And then this is the big B is the month spelled out. So what I did here was month-month, but I wanted the number 12-December because I wanted to sort by the number of the month, not alphabetically. That's one other thing. So when you're sorting things alphabetically, if you just have the month spelled out, the months of the year don't go alphabetically. So if you want those to go in the order of sequence, I like to put the number of the month at the beginning of that, and that just helps with sorting. It doesn't change any of the stuff that's inside of it. It just makes the sorting of the folders a little bit easier. So with that, let's go ahead and jump over to Mylio and let's run through an import together. I walked around my house this morning with my little tiny camera and took a handful of pictures, and I'm going to go ahead and bring those into Mylio Photos right now, and we're going to walk through this process together. So I've got my little memory card. I'm going to pop that into my computer here. And one of the nice things about a memory card is it should just pop up and offer me to copy. So I allow it, and then Mylio is going to recognize that, and it automatically goes to the copy files dialog. If that doesn't happen, there's a setting inside of the settings in Mylio to automatically recognize cameras and memory cards, or you can always just go up here and click that plus button, and you're going to get to the import dialogues. So from here, we've got my source is untitled. That's how my camera happens to title those cards. And then I can choose where these pictures go. So for me, I want these to go in my main photos, which is my organization. You might have Mylio pictures. You might have created something else. You choose where you want them to go. So you can always click on the little 3 dots and choose the folder you specifically want those to go into. So let's go ahead and just say photos. That's good. Assign categories on import. If you are using a family plan, if you are using spaces and you want to add categories, or if you're using categories for a different part of your organization, you can add those categories here. So I can go ahead and click on this, and I can say these are personal, or I can say there's something else. I can choose custom, and that pulls up my full list, which I can also edit and add different things. So go ahead and add those categories on import. When you're copying things in, by default, exclude suspected duplicates is on. What that means is if you're bringing in a new source of images, Mylio is going to double check that against what's already in your library. And if that file already exists, it's going to skip it. This is really great for organizing things, or if you're on a trip and you're doing repeated imports off the same memory card, pulling in pictures day after day after day, you don't want it to bring in the stuff that you already imported. This does a great job of making sure you're only importing that file once. The next option here to delete files after adding them, if you were doing a move import, this would be on. So you can kind of override that here, but by default it's off, meaning that the stuff that's on my memory card will stay on my memory card until I go back and take that to my camera and reformat it, which is what I prefer. Now let's go ahead and dive down into the show advanced settings. This is where I can add all of that other information that's pertinent to make my organization better later. First up, apply IPTC card on import. We'll talk about this more next week, but this is my contact and copyright information that I want to embed into all of the photos that I import. I have that turned on. If I was bringing in family history pictures that were somebody else's pictures, I would turn this off because I didn't capture them. I don't want to apply my copyright to photos that somebody else took. So that's something that you can consider. Next up, display an app. I have it set to display the raw files. That's my choice. I don't think I have this camera set to RAW plus JPEG. I might, I don't even remember now. But I can also say non-RAW. So if it's a RAW plus JPEG pair, or later on with this next update, a raw plus HEIC pair, I can say I want that JPEG or that HEIC, that non-raw, to be the one that displays in Mylio. And then we're on to file naming. This is where we choose what we want our pictures to be named. And I've got this set for year, month, day, and then underscore and the little o. Let's go down here and see what that little o is. And there we go. And it's the image file name with that extension. So I'm preserving the original file name, and basically I'm appending the date to it. So I'm going to have my year-month-day underscore original file name. And I think that's just fine. Again, you can make this whatever you want, and whatever you used previously is what's going to import. So file naming, I think we're set there. Folder organization, this is where we can choose how we want those folders to be organized. So if I was bringing this in from an external hard drive that was already somewhat organized and I wanted to preserve that structure, I would choose one of these top items. If, however, I want Mylio to reorganize those folders, I'm going to choose one of these options down here. And I happen to have custom chosen, and I have it set to create that file structure for me. So it's going to go into a top level one here for the year. It's going to be 2025. And then inside of that, one for year, month, day. So that's the format that I've chosen inside that photos folder to create that structure for me. I'm gonna go ahead and go back out of this. And then I can finally add some keywords. This is just for searchability later on. And I can go ahead and just say home, because these are they're just random moments in my home here this morning. Once you have all that keyed in, go ahead and click copy now. And that's gonna go ahead and start importing that media. And I can go ahead and verify that. I'm going to go into my photos folder, and we're going to go into 2025. We're going to scroll down here to the bottom, and we're going to see it here. There, it just popped up 2025, 12/12. And I selected that top level one because 2025 already existed. It created the new day folder, and it put it exactly where it was supposed to go in my organization. So I didn't have to go moving things around, and it just makes my life easier. From there, I can go ahead and click into that folder, and I can see all of these pictures. I just took a few pictures of my Christmas decorations, and there we go. That brought in those pictures, and if I click on one of these, I can go down here into my keywords. I can see that there's home already applied as a keyword. If I go down to categories, I added the category personal. That's already there. So a lot of that heavy lifting is already done. And that's the beauty of those advanced settings inside the import dialog. It can really make your life a lot easier down the road as you're bringing media in to do some of those things up front to save you time later. All right, so let's pop back over here to this. The things that I want you to take away from this presentation, just a reminder that adding a device and adding a media are not the same thing. Adding a device is telling Mylio where to store things. Adding media is what we just did. We're bringing new media into our library. We talked about copying, moving, and linking a folder, when to use each. Copy and move are going to be the ones you're going to use most often. Probably copy is the one that I recommend for most situations. Linking is for when you want to add a folder at its current location that you want Mylio to watch a new folder. Every folder that's in Mylio exists on your hard drives. It's just a matter of whether it's one that Mylio already knows about or you're telling it to watch a new one. And then finally, don't forget to add some of that important metadata upon import. Rename those files. Make sure your folder organization is the way you want it to be. Add some keywords. If you use categories as part of your overall organization, add those on import. It just makes your life so much simpler. Just a reminder then that we have live Q&A next Tuesday and Thursday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific, 2:30 p.m. Eastern. And next Friday, our coffee break will be on copyright basics. And again, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to talk about protecting your images with the Copyright Office. That's something to talk to your legal professional about. But I can tell you how to add your copyright information, your contact information to your pictures. It's just one level of protection in case somebody wants to reach out to you about your pictures. You put them online. We'll talk a bit more about that next week. Again, 11:30 a.m. Pacific, 2:30 p.m. Eastern. That's on Friday. Hope you guys will join us for that. Thank you, Lori, for helping out in the chat, sharing all of the helpful links. And I know that slide with all of those little codes on it was tiny. Those are all in the manual. That was just kind of a representation to show you that there's a lot of options there. but you can find each and every one of those in the manual. And also when you scroll down inside that custom list, all of those are inside Mylio as well. So you can see an example of what they are. Hope that helps. Hope you guys enjoyed today's session. Thank you again so much for joining me, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.